got to admit, Mondays usually are my favorite day on this show because there's so much to talk about from the weekend. And we also have a lovely and very talented panelist, and Roy has switched. Let me welcome in our panelist. Here we go. How are you? This is the Press Box. Here is Roy Cummings for the Tampa Tribune and TBO.com. Normally here on Tuesdays, but because of Buccaneer minicamp, you're here on a Monday.
And when you said lovely and talented, we obviously meant me, of course.
No, you're handsome. Handsome,
yeah.
Dapper.
Yeah,
Is
dapper.
that good?
Well, I appreciate that.
And for the lovely and talented, she is with SportsTalkFlorida.com. She's a Buccaneer insider, also on 8:20 a.m. now. Is it your wake-up call?
Your wake-up call.
Your wake-up call?
Just debuted last week.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank
Jenna
you.
Lane, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we are going to get into football. That's going to be our second segment. That's what you guys know best, but you also follow a lot of other sports, and especially the Tampa Bay Rays. The new news with the Rays, if you didn't hear, Joe Maddon has pulled Grant Balfour as their closer. And what he's going to do is closer by committee. Boy, they spent a lot of money on this guy, you know, and they don't have that much money to spend. Right move by Joe Maddon, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer, and you hate to have to make this move because, you know, obviously, as you said, they spent a lot of money on him. To me, this was the signature move of the offseason. I thought when they got Grant Balfour, that was a sign they were going for it. They thought they had a real shot at the World Series this year, and now that you've pulled him at this point, obviously, it's a sign that clearly, and we don't even have to mention it, but things are just unraveling for that team. The wheels are coming off. The wheels obviously came off of Grant Balfour yesterday, giving up 5 runs. Second time he's done that this year. That's not what you bought a closer for. He's not getting the job done. You have to make a move. You have to do something. Yeah, it was the right move.
I agree with you. What do you think, Jenna?
You know, this ship was sinking fast, and what are they, 10 straight now? Is it 10 straight in a row? I can't even keep track at this point in time. But, you know, I'll tell you what, I was a little worried with him just because you saw earlier in the season when he did have another one of those implosions and you saw the way he lost his composure. The same thing happened again. I mean, Chris Archer goes out there and gives over, you know, a little over 6 innings, you know, shutout innings, and then he goes in there and he had 2 strikeouts, did he not?
Yeah.
2 strikeouts. Yeah. And then, for whatever reason, things unraveled, but they've got to do something. I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, this whole season, though, it's just beyond him.
And, you know, 0-2 counts as well on every batter that he gave up the hits to. So he was in the zone. He had it going. You know, a little bit of it was bad luck against him, but you know what? Right now, you got to make your own luck. That's what the Rays have to do. They have to figure out a way to make their own luck. Grant Balfour didn't do it. I don't know if he'll be out of that position for long, right, but you got to make a move of some kind.
You know, there was an interesting stat. I'm watching the post-game show, and Todd Callis comes out with, and you know, they tend to be positive because they're your Rays broadcast team, and he was saying that in the history of baseball, 16 games behind out of 500. There's only been one team in the 40s that has made the playoffs. Joe Maddon has actually told the team the goal now 50-50, 500.
Yeah.
Is that a little more realistic? Can they even do that?
Well, what they got to do, 26-10, or maybe it's now 27-10 to get there the rest of the way to get over the next 100, you know, before they get to the 100-game mark. Look, I agree that you've got to do it in small segments. You can't look at it as a big picture thing right now and say, okay, by the end of the year we want to be here. No, you've got to do it in small segments like they do in football. But is it realistic? Not the way this team's playing. This team, look, you look at him, and you know what? There's only one guy with juice right now, and that's Kevin Kiermaier. He's the only guy with any juice that I'm seeing on this team. Look, Longo's starting to hit a little bit. He's got a nice little streak going here. He's hitting a good 400-500 over the last 5-6 games. But, you know, Kiermaier's the only one with any juice. Nobody's picking up on that. Nobody in the batting order is picking up on that. Nobody really in the rotation is picking up. They're starting to pitch a little better, but they can't hit.
And then the sheer backbone of this team is pitching. And who would have thought that they'd have to do this season without Matt Moore? The fact that they wouldn't have Jeremy Hellickson. And then now, too, they also are without Will Myers for 2 months with his injury. So all of those things compounded. And I raised the argument, actually, on Sports Talk Florida the other day. You know, is it time to deal David Price? Was he $14 million, one-year deal? At some point, you know, if he's no longer part of this team's future, I hate to part ways with him.
I think there's smaller solutions. I agree with that, but I think there's smaller solutions. And I think it starts with Joe Maddon. Look, this has always been a small ball team. It's got to start playing small ball. Joe, I know you don't like it, but you've got to bunt when you got runners on first and second and nobody out. You've got to hit and run when you got runners on first and third and 1 out. You've got to start moving the ball around, forcing the other team to make some throws and maybe make some mistakes. You can't do it. Your hitters aren't going to do it on their own. You got to start playing some small ball, making some things happen for yourself.
It was funny too on the day that they had the tribute to Don Zimmer. They did do this squeeze, and it actually worked. It was called it's kind of called a safety squeeze. We want to move on to football. When we return, Your wheelhouse, guys. Let's talk little Bucks. Mike Glennon. Will he win the starting job? Would Lovie Smith allow actual competition during preseason? I know Jen has talked to the quarterback coach, Roy. You talked with the offensive coordinator, Jeff Tedford. They weigh in next. And welcome back to the Press Box. I'm Rock Raleigh, fresh off a weekend, and we are now talking off-season football, NFL, Bucks, Roy Cummings, Tampa Tribune, your NFL Buccaneer beat writer, and your Buccaneer insider for Sports Talk Florida, Jenna Lane. I'm going to start with you, Jenna. What are the chances that Mike Glennon can actually overtake Josh McCown? And I'm talking about like once the regular season starts. Because I read what you said with Marcus Arroyo just raving. Everybody's been raving. The coaching staff's been raving about Glennon.
Yeah, but I still think it's Josh McCown's team at this point in time, and that's not a knock against Glennon. But I just think, given the fit, you look at some of the things that you see from Jeff Tedford's offense in practice. I've seen a lot of these screens to the running backs and things like that. You also have contested catches, which, you did see that a lot with Glennon last year. He is capable of lobbing the ball up in the air. But I just think the way this team has been built, the fact that Josh McCown had an influence in the guys that they were drafting, the fact that Josh McCown and Lovie Smith, Jason Light said he was in their ear the whole time during the draft about getting some of these big targets, getting an Austin Seferian-Jenkins, getting a Mike Evans. I think this is his team, but at the same time, you know what? He's 35 years old. They've got an eye on the future, and they're seeing if they can groom him and develop him into an eventual starter.
Well, all you got to do is take a look at Josh McCown's track record to know that, yeah, there's every great chance in the world for Mike Glennon to be the starter on opening day. And certainly 5-6 weeks into the season. And not just because Mike Glennon has the potential to be, has more upside. Not because he's got more upside, which clearly he does. Right. A big part of it is the fact that Lovie Smith and Jason Light believe this team can win now. They are not planning to go through any kind of a rebuilding process here. They want to win right now. They expect to win right now. And if Josh McCown isn't getting that job done, Mike Glennon's going to get the ball, folks.
It is going to be interesting to see, really, honestly. Okay, now, has not been a repeat winner of the NFC South since it was formed in 2002. Every year, it's a different team. Can the trend continue? Cam Newton and the Panthers, they were it last year. Lovey, it was Shiano's team. That's different. Is there a chance there would be a different winner this year?
I don't like Carolina when they lost Steve Smith and they lost Hedgen Jr. and then they replaced it with, they got Tyquan Underwood, no offense to him, but again, Steve Smith, big shoes to fill. And then they went out and drafted Kelvin Benjamin. You needed a big physical receiver, but I think it's going to be really difficult for them to come back and repeat. I love what they're doing on defense, but I think that Cam Newton might struggle a little bit because he's not going to have the targets that he's used to having. So, I think we're going to be, personally, I think New Orleans is probably going to be the team to watch for. I love what they did on offense. Brandon Cooks, they've got that speed. He's a 4-3-1 guy. I really liked that pick for them. And any team that has Drew Brees, the quick release that he has, the fact that he can just thread the needle, he's tremendous. And that defense is going to have another year under Rob Ryan. So they're going to have more players that they're able to get specifically for that scheme. It's remarkable they had the success that they did last year based on the fact that they were just 1 year removed from operating a 4-3. Yeah,
if you're asking me to pick a champion today in that division, I'm going to go with Jenna. I'm going to say New Orleans. I'll say New Orleans wins it. And after that, I suppose there might be a wild card team out of the group. But, the reason that this title has changed hands every year since the development of the NFC South is because the division is so tough. It's so difficult, and you've got four very good teams. Over the course of history, you've had four very good teams at different times in this division, and you've still got that. I think the Bucs are going to surprise some people. I think they're going to be at least a 500 football team. I think the Falcons are going to bounce back. As I said, I think the Saints are probably the elite team in the division. I think Carolina is going to be a tough team, but I agree with Jenna. I think they made some mistakes and let some people go, and I don't think they necessarily filled the holes with upgrades. Now,
there was a leak report. Minnesota paper had it. It was pages and pages of demands by the NFL to the host Super Bowl city. And, it's unbelievable. Some of the things you would expect, free presidential suites in hotels, free police escorts for team owners, free billboards and ads on local media, but free golf and the bowling alleys and the cell phone, the usage. You got to erect proper cell phone towers. Is it getting out of hand? Is it too much? And is it worth it for a city to give in to so many demands for a Super Bowl.
And we haven't even gotten into the fact that you essentially need to build a brand new stadium to make it happen, because I'll tell you what, I remember when I covered the Super Bowl right here in Tampa Bay, and I had so many members of the media, people that worked in the league, that said, man, this city's great, you know, we're so much better than Miami. And because it wasn't long before that it was in Miami, and then the next year it was in Fort Lauderdale. And they raved about the fact that everything was so close together, the weather was great, you know, flying in, they didn't have any issues. But they're not bringing it back here. Why? Because the stadium. They don't have a new stadium. They want to reward the teams that have the brand new stadiums. You know, when they're trying to bring back, you know, games, and thankfully they were able to get the BCS title game that's going to be coming, which that's going to be great. But, you know, until you're willing to fork over the amount of money to build a stadium, it's not going to be back here. And I think that that's just atrocious. Really, we're going to fly people into Minneapolis? I mean, we're really going to think about doing that on a regular basis? They got lucky in New York, but I can tell you, it might not be that way.
Yeah, the thing is, the NFL can ask for all these things, Rock, because they get them. You know, there's enough cities out there competing for this event that if City A doesn't want it, well, then City B is going to say, all right, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll give you the presidential suites. We'll shut down 4 bowling alleys for you. We'll do whatever you want. And they want it when it happens. They want it to be a seamless event. Let me tell you, having covered, you know, about 16 of these things, there's nothing worse than, you know, not being able to do your job. And if it means that you've got to erect a cell phone tower so that I can make a phone call, or so that I can have the proper, you know, Wi-Fi set up so I can get my stories written and filed in my newspaper, absolutely. You know, and you don't want to hear a bunch of media people, you know, 2,000 of them screaming on, you know, about not having the proper access to do their job.
Ask
so it's got to be
about
seamless.
that.
No, exactly. Yes, it's got to be a seamless
I know
event.
what they are, King, aren't they? The NFL. When we come back, horse racing, California crying? We'll explain. It's straight ahead. Hey, thanks for watching us, guys. This is the Press Box Monday through Friday, 6 p.m., 11 p.m., 8 a.m. the next morning. Now, California Chrome's owner, Steve Coburn, really ripped the way other horses didn't run either of the 2 big events prior to Belmont. I think where he actually crossed the line was he said it's the coward's way out. I ask you, and we'll start with you, Roy, was he just kind of whining, or was he speaking the truth?
This is clearly loser's lament. He gave it a good run. California Chrome gave it a good run. Look, I'm on record. I said it on the show last week. I was pulling for California Chrome, and I was pulling for Steve Coburn and his fellow owner as well. I wanted them to win because I thought their story is a tremendous story, and he tarnished the story a little bit this weekend by whining about the situation. Here's the thing. Look, if you don't want to enter the race with other horses that are fresh because they haven't run in the Kentucky Derby or the Preakness, I'm sorry, don't run your horse. You want to make a statement about this? Don't run the horse. Go ahead. Say there's not going to be a Triple Crown this year because I'm not going to put my horse up against horses that are fresh and make it an unfair race. If you think it's unfair, take your horse out. That would have been a statement to make, not whining afterwards about the way that was set up.
Now, Jenna, I know you're going to hit on this on your rant, but can you lend a little bit for us maybe right now?
I'll give you a little bit.
Okay.
No, I completely agree with Roy when it comes to that. You know, you don't have to essentially enter the Preakness. You don't have to enter the Derby. That was by choice. He decided to enter his horse into that, and you know what? Because of that, California Chrome was not running on fresh legs, and I think you could even see that in the race, although I know also, too, the horse was injured coming off, right from the start. So with all that being said...
But at the end of the day, you know what?
You choose to compete.
Right, you choose to compete, and again, he could have made a bold statement by not entering the horse, but here's something that maybe happens in horse racing. Maybe they listen to him and say, you know what? Maybe he's got a point. Maybe, although it might, tarnish the Triple Crown a little bit, because if you start taking those horses out of that race,
it's supposed to be special.